Hey everybody, this review is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to split this into two sections, so I'll try and avoid talking about anything from the other album until I finish talking about the first one. So we're going to be reviewing the double album by Butcher Babies, Eye for an Eye, Till the World's Blind. These are two different albums, and they pretty much joined together as a double album. It's not that they released the same time and they're different stuff, they actually are conjoined. It's even officially announced. There's a CD you can get which has double disc of both album arts, and it's interesting. Eye for an Eye is the shorter of the two. It has 6 unique tracks and a radio edit for the number 7 track, which is of the first song, Sleeping with the Enemy, but instead the guitars are performed by Andy James, the guitarist for Five Finger Death Punch. And we also have another guest artist. We have the lead singer of Escape the Fate as well for its Killing Time Baby, and it kind of makes sense to bring a metal vocalist into at least this track, because everything else does not necessarily feel fully like Butcher Babies, or at least like heavy Butcher Babies. We're going for a more metalcore accessible part here, especially with Bottom of the Bottle, Dreaming in Colour, and Last Dance. These songs just have a lot less aggression to them, and they just kind of want to go for some more clean stuff, which makes sense. They, I guess to say that they have kept it for this part of the album. It's sort of like the awakening for what's to come, and I'm not going to spoil that until I get to that point. But Eye for an Eye, I think it's kind of alright in some cases. I don't think anything's terrible, but I just don't think any of it's necessarily as impressively great. I mean, I did find myself quite liking Bottom of the Bottle, and Dreaming in Colour is also pretty good as well. I think It's Killing Time Baby kind of is the closest on this part of the album we'll get to just that classic Butcher Babies, but even then it feels quite different. They follow the more metalcore trend, and it definitely shows. It just tries to balance out some screams here and there, the way that a lot of bands have been doing it more recently, and even the guitars kind of fit in with it as well. It's fine. I think this is the first one works on out of the two, because they had released a lot of the singles prior to COVID. Around 2020 you started having singles for this, and I think they've been releasing them for a couple of years just from this EP alone, making Dreaming in Colour and the radio edit of Sleeping with the Enemy the only new material on this record, and that's only one unique song. So definitely I wouldn't say Eye for an Eye is the one that really pulls the stops. It's the real gut punch that you want to go into with this record. It's just kind of there. I guess it's just to kind of see what audiences it would attract, but lyrically I just kind of find it weak at times. I've just never really found Yorktown's lyrics to be great. The whole thing about acting like a cat on the prowl, it just kind of has this very sexual tension to it, especially when you have them mentioning catcall, just the overall little chant in the chorus as well, talking about 6667. Just the overall energy kind of comes with this like bad girl angst. And I know Butcher Babies have done that before, but Yorktown's way here just kind of feels a bit odd in my opinion, but I still like the song. I don't hate it. I think the vibe of this one is cool. I do quite like the instrumentals and vocals on this EP. I just think lyrically it's not as great in some of the tracks, and I just find from some of the earlier stuff it's an interesting taste. It's not something I'm crazy on, and I feel to really enjoy this, I guess you just kind of have to get more used to it. But I find it weird that they have been sprinkling the singles for this, so you're getting used to this style only to be into Till the World's Blind, which is not like the first tracks on Eye for an Eye. It makes no sense. You're kind of being led into this sound to then fully drift away. I guess this is the band wanted to experiment, but Eye for an Eye might as well just been an EP, because it definitely feels like it's just a bunch of songs they wrote for this only, and the actual album is not here until we get to Till the World's Blind. I kind of said what I wanted to say about Eye for an Eye. Out of the album, it doesn't even nearly stand up compared to Till the World's Blind. This is definitely the stronger material, is ahead of us, and honestly I'm not surprised a lot of people would just rather go into Till the World's Blind instead of Eye for an Eye. It's kind of an interesting concept, but I guess if you do really like it, then you would listen to both, and it's not bad, but it's kind of when you get something that you think's pretty alright to good, and then you just get something that's a lot better, that's kind of the realization you think, okay, so we got used to this new sound to kind of explore something that's not even similar. But yeah, we'll go into Till the World's Blind, the stronger portion of the double album, and I can safely say this is pretty good. I actually really enjoyed it. It's a very different take on the style that we had going up to this point. It definitely doesn't sound like anything Butcher Babies hasn't done, but at the same time it's got a modern twinge of new elements, such as we have more djent this time around, which wasn't necessarily a huge thing around 2017, but a lot of bands have been kind of implementing it more and more, and I guess Butcher Babies is no exception. So we have a bit more of that djent sound. As well as that, we also got some more new metal elements, I'd say, on this as well, with tracks like Beaver Cage, just with the way it has its sort of rap flow delivery. This is not the only song that does it. I think there's a few others that kind of sprinkle in elements of new metal, but it's definitely two of the things that I just noticed compared to Eye for an Eye. I think it's also got a little bit of an industrial sound, especially towards the end with Till the World's Blind, which kind of has a very interesting delivery, and overall the instrumentals on this one is great. The way it just kind of throws you around with some very just a very interesting tone format I really enjoy. Till the World's Blind's kind of got a lot of energy that it's concealing, and it doesn't even explode with it. It's like holding all this pressure into a glass bottle, and just somehow it's not cracking. That's what I like about it. That's just kind of how I think about this track. It's just, there's so much they want to unleash, but they don't, because otherwise it kind of just feel like another song on this record. This record has some songs that do feel similar to each other, don't get me wrong, but that's just because I think they're more of the filler tracks. There's still some fantastic tracks on this record, and I went live, I said tracks like Wrong End of the Knife, Kingpin, Till the World's Blind, I First Sleep at the Table are some of the really good, interesting tracks. And we do have a little bit of variety too, so it's not all just intense new metal elements with a bit of rapping, or just some overall Baltic heavy tracks. We also have some softer ballady elements, and this is mainly in two tracks. We have Last December, which is one of them, and This Is the Part. Last December is fantastic. I really like this one. It's kind of a nice, moodier track. I think this one definitely captivates some of the better songwriting, especially in the last couple of years. Not saying that I wasn't a big fan of the last record, but I feel like Last December is showing that they can experiment more, and it pays off quite nicely with some lovely additions to it as well. Last December is brilliant, and This Is the Part, which has Chad Gray, the vocalist for Mudvayne, which, believe it or not, being in Mudvayne, I would assume it would be a heavier song. The fact that it's the lightest song on the album is insane. It's literally as surprising as having Mick Gordon on score in The End of the World without him really ripping and tearing into the guitars. Like, it's just something that kind of throws you out of the loop, because you'd expect Chad Gray to just scream, but I guess it's just kind of a way to enhance his clean vocals, considering, well, Mudvayne reformed, and his performance coming back wasn't necessarily the best, so having him do some cleans here, I guess, is a good way to see if he can do it, and Chad Gray's got it. I think he's got a good voice that layers well with the vocalist of the band, so it's pretty nice juxtaposition between the two of that there. And yeah, I generally say there's a lot of crazy stuff on this record. I mean, Darn That Nightmare, which is like an interlude intro, tries to have its own little fun with lyrics that kind of feel like a light toned Cannibal Corpse song. Literally, you definitely got some, so I'm not even going to mention any of it, but it just feels like, hey, you know Cannibal Corpse, let's just add that to like this 1930s sort of sound. It's weird, but you know, I guess they just wanted to have something interesting to the part Eye for an Eye to this whole section, and it definitely is more interesting than some of the filler tracks. I'd say some of the filler tracks only feel like that because there's not really too much distinction between it. Like, The Devil Cut Me Off and Spitting Teeth, like, these are great tracks, but I feel like they just don't really differentiate as much. There's a lot of melodic moments in tracks like Wrong End of the Knife, Last December, that definitely gives it a very interesting shift with the narrative, and I love it with the amount of elements they've been blending to create something that's definitely unique and one of their more experimented albums. But there's definitely some filler in there, and I'd say to the second half that's where you start to notice it a lot more. But I haven't even gotten to the best part of this. I haven't talked about the best song on this album, the Best Friend song by Saweetie featuring Doja Cat. Now, I'm just gonna be honest, I mean, bands have done some weird covers. I mean, we've had the Justin Bieber Let Me Love You cover by Love and Death, and I'm not saying that's good, but bands do covers, and they can be very surprising, and this is very surprising. Best Friend, just in my opinion, isn't a good cover. I think it's not terrible, and it kind of fits in with the new metal vibe that some of the tracks have, but I think this would be much rather suited for a new, just kind of a bonus song, I'd say. This kind of has a more bonus tracky feel, or maybe just not on the album at all. I don't really care if this exists or not. It's kind of, that's how I felt about it. But yeah, as a whole though, the Till the World's Blind is pretty good. I've definitely been hooked on this one. There's a lot of great tracks. From Red Thunder till the World's Blind, there hasn't really been many moments I kind of felt a little off with it. I mean, Beaver Cage is an interesting vibe. Like I said, it's quite different. It goes for a more new metal approach, like probably the most new metal I've heard them in ages. But then you kind of experiment around that point, and then you just kind of go into the classic stuff. I feel like the middle of the album is just so weird in pacing of the ideas, and then the first half is just filled with the bangers, and the second half has got a little bit of filler, but they still have some pretty good heavy stuff as well. It's pretty much experimenting to either a balance of all the stuff I've mentioned genre-wise. I'd say it's a good album. Putting the two together, I don't necessarily see the point. I think they're quite different stories. I think they're quite different albums, and I feel like they're only put together because they had two projects they're working on and decided just to put them together. If it was just Eye for an Eye was released as an EP, but it connected to this album, that probably makes more sense than just having it be a part of the album. But you know, it's still good, even with Eye for an Eye not being as good as a lot of the tracks on Till the World's Blind. I'd say Till the World's Blind is still a pretty good album. It's nothing crazy, and I do think some of the songs do sink a little bit and just kind of drag it down, but there's a lot of elements I have quite enjoyed. I went into this album not knowing what to expect after listening to Eye for an Eye, and I can definitely say that I think Till the World's Blind really holds it up. If it was just Eye for an Eye and that's the sound, I probably wouldn't really like this record, so it's nice that we kind of go from that, to be honest. But despite having the songs I'm not as big on this one, as well as the Eye for an Eye tracks, it's kind of comes off as a good mixed bag, because I even like the songs that are weaker on this record, but there's a bunch of songs I don't think are as good, and I kind of know they're not as good. So ranking this will be kind of a pain in the ass, as well as, I guess, giving it the overall rating. If I had to be honest, I feel this album could go for a 3.5 out of 5. I feel like that's a ranking I've given a lot of albums, but I definitely feel here is a good example, because it's better than good, but it's not quite there to being their solid, absolute masterpiece. But if this is the direction they're going and they're playing with a lot of new elements, I'm all for it, because I like experimentation. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you in the next video.